They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
The anxious generation, Generation Z, looking for happiness, and they're finding a lot of woke culture. Welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
And I am so excited, Katie. We have just been introduced to Courtney and Ted Blacker, and they are the, producer and director of a film that's out right now. It's called An Anxious Generation Searches for Happiness, The Coddling of the American Mind, available at thecoddlingmovie.com. This tells a really important story about the health and happiness of our upcoming generation. And I want to welcome you both. Thanks for the important work that you're doing, Courtney and Ted. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Jen. And just a quick correction. The Anxious Generation is a separate book written by Jonathan Haidt. That's a different project.
This is the adapted version of the film, right?
An Anxious Generation Searches for Happiness. That's our tagline.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because we made a movie on his other book called The Coddling of the American Mind.
Coddling of the American Mind, and it's available at coddlingmovie.com. And this was an adaptation you talked about of these great writers. And of course, this is something that I guess must have been an issue that stood up for you. What made you guys decide to take on this project?
There were a number of reasons. A big one is that we have a 10-year-old son, and we were reading the book, and the book is all about, mostly about Gen Z. So people are roughly in their 20s these days, and the mental health crisis that they're suffering through. Tremendous increase in the rates of anxiety, depression, and unfortunately even suicide. And the book goes into why that happened, and why it happened actually rather abruptly around about 2012. And so the movie goes into that as well. And reading the book, we thought, my goodness, we need to sound the alarm, not just for this generation, Gen Z, but for our son's generation, which is, we recently learned, is called Gen Alpha, and for all the generations coming after his generation, because this really is one of the biggest problems that we're facing, not just in America, but in the world. A lot of it has to do with the twisted campus culture that we see on too many universities these days, but it doesn't start there. There's a whole web of problems that the book deals with, and that the movie deals with. So we're filmmakers. That's what we do. And our motto is making important ideas entertaining. So we had a very important idea, the Gen Z mental health crisis. And then it was just up to Courtney and me to make that idea entertaining.
So I want to jump right into it, because I found the film absolutely fascinating. And just to be really upfront about this, so I have a daughter who is Gen Z, born at the beginning of that. But there was also so much that I related to personally in the film. Like all the anxieties around being an adolescent, and all the weirdness, the social awkwardness. And I feel like, when I was a kid, nobody talked about anxiety, right? You just smoked pot and kind of figured it out, right?
The more things change, the more they stay the same, right?
Exactly. Whereas my daughter's generation is completely different. And I have to tell you, she actually became a therapist. So I think that's, and it's fascinating to me how many of her friends, like, they just take it for granted that they're all going to be in therapy, which I find they are all in therapy. I find it fascinating that even as young couples, a lot of couples start couples therapy, like, proactively, which I find fascinating. Okay, so this is my perspective. So let me go straight away to something that really stood out for me in the film. I thought it was absolutely fascinating. So you talk about the fact that there was a marked change in rates of anxiety, depression, suicide around the period of 2012. And you tied that into the emergence of social media. So I guess social media really started as a thing in 2004, but between 2009 and 2012, it changed, right? That's when you started having the like buttons and the retweeting and things going viral. And so talk to us about how did that change in social media impact girls, and how did it impact girls differently from how it impacted boys?
Yeah, well, those features really were very important because, and before that, social media was quite benign. You just kind of, the old Facebook back in the early-ish 2000s, you would just kind of post about who your favorite bands are. Even Twitter was kind of like that. But with the advent of the like and the retweet, you now posts could become viral. So you could become a terrible person in a nanosecond now because people are, telling the world what a terrible person you are. And on the flip side, you can also get more instant feedback from the world and positive feedback. So the reason why these innovations affected young women more is because they were more drawn to platforms like Instagram, where they're very kind of based on looks are a big premium. So there's a lot of pressure to look the right way, say the right things, have the right kind of lifestyle where you can kind of show off what you have. And so while the boys, so many of them were off playing video games, which has its own problems, but in general, video games are not as bad, not as deleterious psychologically as something like Instagram. So while the boys were playing video games, the girls were posting on Instagram, oftentimes using filters to make themselves look better. And then they would wait and wait and wait and wait for somebody to validate them, to give them a thumbs up, a click, a heart. You look so pretty. That looks so nice. And so we were really unwittingly, a lot of parents, administrators, and others allowing and sometimes priming young girls for this behavior where they post something and they wait. And while they're waiting, they're racked with anxiety because, of course, on social media, you can never be good enough. You can never be pretty enough or this enough or that enough. And of course, if you're 12 or 13, you don't know that. Even a lot of us adults don't really get the message till far too late. So it was a very, very difficult time for all young people, but especially girls.
And I also think that what was different, especially from how we grew up, Gen X, is this generation of kids, social media, as Ted said, it can give you instant positive gratification, but it can also record one of the most embarrassing parts of your life forever. And that's really intimidating, right? Like when we were growing up and something embarrassing happened in middle school or high school, it happened. There probably wasn't a photograph of it. There probably wasn't a recording of it. And it's in everyone's memory, but then that dissipates. That's just not the case, is it? And we've screened the Coddling of the American Mind at a few college campuses. And I was really disturbed to hear from one of the professors at a very prominent college talk about how the graduating class, this was just like a year ago, how so many of these young people are just completely erasing their social media. They're going through it because they're afraid that someday someone's going to dig something up, and we see this happen all the time with celebrities, people in entertainment, that will hurt them when they go into the job, the marketplace, to try to get a job, to date. This is a really different, weird thing. I mean, Katie, you were talking about this, brought up memories of you having anxiety going to the dining hall. We all did. That's normal and that's real. Can you imagine that paired with this other thing that is sort of encapsulating it? And so that's part of the problem and the issue and the pressures too that are really driving this anxiety, depression, and sometimes worse.
It's really interesting because I always think, gosh, we all went through the stage where I think we were feeling heavy anxiety. The angst of going through those teenage years into your later teenage years. I mean, there's always that drama, and to have it follow you all the time, which is what social media does, that you can't even go home to disconnect anymore. It used to be, the phone call you'd go hide in your bedroom with the corded phone from the kitchen. And now, I mean, kids have access to this content and they have access to their peers 24/7. There's no break. What role do you think parents need to be playing in all this? Because the social media is not going to go away. So this crisis is going to continue. If anything, people are just going to become more and more addicted to it. So how do we deal with that?
Yeah, parents definitely need to understand that these new technologies are not benign, especially for young kids, preteens, tweens. So some very simple things you can do. Sometimes they're simple, but sometimes they can be difficult these days. Delay the age at which you give your child a smartphone. So at least wait till eighth grade, for instance. Then delay the age you allow your child to use social media. At least Jonathan Haidt recommends, for instance, age 16. I think maybe age 33 or something would be better. um, so the reason that Gen Z got hit so hard with the mental health crisis, at least as it relates to social media, is because they were the very first generation of humans ever in the history of humanity to have this new technology uh, and to have access to it during their middle school years. So those are very formative years when you're trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out your kind of place in the world. So if you can even just delay that to even like 16-ish, then it won't be quite as bad. And now you still have even much older adults, of course, can ruin their lives on social media and can dig themselves into terrible wormholes and compare themselves to others. We older adults can do all the stupid things that teens do, but at least when you're a little bit older, you have a little bit more sense of the world, sense of who you are, and so you're a little bit better equipped to handle the madness of social media.
And Jen, you were talking, I love that anecdote you had about you in the bedroom with the phone and, having the secret conversation. And that's what we did, right? Like we talked to our girlfriends. That's where gossip would happen. And kind of getting back to how boys and girls use it differently. Girls can be really mean. Boys can be mean too. But girls tend to, and Jonathan Haidt talks about this a little bit in the film. They use it differently. They use it to bully. They use it to shame. They use it to create cliques. And where we were on the phone hiding in the bedroom, that gossip session or whatever, we're complaining about a friend or another girl at school, that was a phone conversation and it ended. Now those conversations are posted online. And girls are hit really hard with it because of the use and how in the context of that
Right.
use.
Yeah, their bullying, like Courtney says, is more psychological, while boys' bullying involves more like punch to the face kind of things.
All right, so I want to talk about another sort of theme or element in the film that you talked about that really hit home for me. And I don't think it's an easy topic. I think it's a complicated topic. And that is, you made the point that kids are very coddled these days, right? They're very protected. And you make the point that a lot of the students, when they arrive in college now, they did not have the life experiences of previous generations, right? One of the speakers in the film says, I think something along the lines of like her sister had started dating when she was 13, but she didn't start till 21, or I don't, something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
And I get that, but I want to tell you something from the perspective of my generation, because as I said, I grew up in the 60s and 70s when we were wild. We were just like it was such benign neglect, right? Our parents let us do anything. We all, and everybody, I feel like so many people in my generation will talk about this. We rode our bikes to the craziest places. We did crazy, crazy things. And I think part of what happened is, we know what kind of trouble kids can get into when they're left on their own because we got into that trouble, right? So I think as a generation, we are much more protective of our kids. So I know you talk about the coddling is problematic, but is it really so out of place? I mean, are we not like realistically protecting our kids? I don't know. I'm just curious now that you're parents yourselves, do you not feel compelled to somewhat coddle and protect your son?
Oh, definitely. We joke about it all the time. Even being steeped in all this coddling conversation really for years now. There's some things, when we see him climb a tree or something, there's something like primal within us that scream like protect, protect. Like you can't just let him do that, even though like we did that ourselves growing up, of course. So so the answer is like definitely yes. We definitely coddle. I would say one of us tends to coddle more than the other. We don't have to get into who that is. We don't have to point any fingers. Uh, but you're right, Katie. It's really, I think, like so much of life, it's finding the sweet spot. It's finding, you've got two extremes, or you could mess up as a parent because you neglect your kid too much, or you could mess up because you overprotect your kid too much. So it's an ongoing challenge to find that sweet spot, that kind of Goldilocks zone. And so I think in previous generations, we definitely, you could see a lot of evidence where the pendulum swung way too much, maybe to one side. But then in recent decades, it's swung too much to the coddling side. And so, yes, on the one hand, we all did stupid things. I'm not going to mention all the stupid things I did, but we also lived through them, and by doing those stupid things, we actually gained confidence, and we kind of learned. Even if you take something like skateboarding, which can look very dangerous, the child is bit by bit challenging him or herself. Can I do this next trick? Can I do, or climbing a tree? Can I go a little bit higher? So you're a little bit scared at first, but then you do it, and then you gain a little bit of confidence, and you climb a little bit higher. You gain a little bit more confidence. You fall down, it hurts, but then you realize you can get through it. So a lot of times these days, we parents are swooping in to make sure that the scraped knees don't happen, and so we're trading kind of short-term comfort for ourselves, not for our children necessarily, but we're neglecting the long-term downsides of that, because when kids aren't allowed to fall off a tree, scrape their knee, riding the skateboard and so forth, they have less confidence in themselves and more anxiety over time. So it definitely is an ongoing challenge to find that sweet spot.
And one thing I'll add very quickly to that, and I'll confess I am the guilty one in this family, and I have to literally force myself not to do it, because I know that if I don't let our son take risks and fail and get it wrong, the wiring of his brain is not going to know how to correct it on his own. And so I saw it. Our son was born in Los Angeles in 2014. And I just remember going to playgrounds when he was 3 years old. And there'd be a group of kids his age, and there'd be like a toy truck or some shovels. And the two little boys, him and another little boy, would start fighting over the truck or fighting over the shovel. And all the moms swooped in to conflict resolve. And I did too, because this is very embarrassing to admit. I was more concerned that I would be perceived as the weirdo for not swooping in, even though my instinct was, it's just a toy truck. They're not hitting each other. No one's getting hurt. It's not violent. That's different. Like, they'll figure it out, but no one would let them figure it out. And the social pressure on the parents was hilarious. And I would talk to mothers privately. I'm like, don't you think it's kind of cool? Or you'd have like friends come over to your house. We'd let them fight over the truck while we're sipping tea. And they figured it out. And so that's another thing. You see it so young. And then the parents get used to it. The kids get used to it. So then when they're on the playground at 7 or 12, it's almost like a new world. Like, wait, so I have to sort this argument out all by myself, or he, she, and I need to figure out what the resolution, and they always do. But I still see it in mothers of 12-year-olds getting involved in their daughters' spats with their friends.
And I think it's interesting, and I really want to dive into this idea of coddling. And again, the film is called "The Coddling of the American Mind." And when you talk about that, yeah, I hear you talking about the parents jumping in and solving conflicts, and maybe even in some ways adding on to the lack of interpersonal skills the younger generation has because they do have social media and because the parents do jump in when it comes to conflict resolution. But as kids get a little older, what I noticed, I mean, when I was growing up, I started working for my family business at 12 years old. If I didn't like what was on the table for dinner, then you weren't going to eat what was on the table. This generation of parents is like, my kid doesn't need to eat, or sorry, my kid doesn't need to work. My kid, I'll make you the special dino chicken nuggets. We'll do that to make sure it's okay. Then when they go off to school, oh gosh, Johnny's offended by the national anthem. We can't sing the national anthem. And, I mean, that to me, when I get it, think about coddling, you come up with what we're seeing now running college campuses, which is a group of people offended by everything, so much so that they take it to the extreme. Is this the danger of coddling, as you say, the American mind, is that we create what we're all having to figure out and live with now, our next generation on college campuses?
Yeah, that's very well said. Mike Rowe from Dirty Job says that if they're the snowflakes, then we're the clouds, and we have to remember that. And look, Courtney and I, when we see and we go on college campuses a lot, we've screened the Coddling movie on dozens of college campuses. It's been in, I think, over 5 countries now, and we've been at hundreds of colleges for our other films. So we're on college campuses a lot, and when you're on campus or when you just see, we all remember all those viral clips of student protesters just losing their mind over usually something really silly and stupid. Um, like those ideas, those people, those young people didn't just like fall from space like that. They were created by, sometimes well-intentioned parenting and administrators at the university, but and oftentimes just very misguided approaches to things. So you see, for instance, on college campuses, students are taught that they can be permanently harmed by words, that we should cancel speakers who have a different point of view than little Johnny might have, because of course the last thing you want to do at college is to have your views challenged, right? So we've completely I mean, don't get us started about the state of the modern university. It's sort of like an inversion these days of what the university is really supposed to be. Instead of going someplace to challenge yourself intellectually, somehow it morphed into the opposite, where President Trump wins again, and it's time to bust out the therapy dogs and let's have massages and play with Legos and fuzzy blankets, because we can't deal with reality, because we've been taught that we can't deal with reality. We can't deal with words that we don't like. We can't deal with opinions that we don't like. If we're mildly uncomfortable about anything, it's time to call a therapist. So we've unfortunately created this generation, and but the good news is, as we show in our movie, this isn't something that cannot be undone. We have in our movie 5 very special 20-somethings, and they've all gone through the ringer in this twisted worldview in one way or another, and they've all come out on the bright side of it. So it can look very dark when you're in it, but what we're trying to say through our movie is that there is a way out. You can pull yourself out of the darkness. You don't have to be afraid of words. You can challenge yourself intellectually, physically. We're actually anti-fragile. We need that kind of challenge in our life. So ultimately, it's a very optimistic take on what can be a very distressing phenomenon.
So what kind of reaction do you get when you show the film on campuses? How do kids react to it?
They love it. The professors are the problem sometimes.
Really?
But, yeah. We've had lots of screenings, as I mentioned. We're invited to Harvard, Princeton, Cornell, UCLA, USC. Almost never by the administration, I should say. It's always by some free speech organization that's tired of the monoculture on campus. But students tell us things, and I remember we've had anonymous questionnaires where 18-year-olds would tell us after watching the movie, they'll say things like, "I'm stronger than I was told," we need to tell kids about this. They say the movie is very truthful. It's very dangerous, they say. One of them, we took a survey and asked how many would recommend the film to others, and we were pleased to see that most of them would. But one sheepishly came up to us afterwards and said that he would not recommend it, and it's because he would be too afraid to recommend it to his classmates, because he is, frankly worried about the social blowback.
What would you like ultimately? And I'd ask the question to both of you. What do you want the impact to be, the lasting impact of the film? When people see that and walk away, what do you want that to mean to them?
It's a great question. One of the most gratifying things that we experience is when parents of Gen Zers watch the film and come up to us or contact us and say, I want my 20-year-old to watch this. I want my friends' 20-year-olds to watch this. It's very important. So in terms of impact, we want parents of Gen Zers and most importantly, Gen Zers and even generations younger than that to walk away knowing that you don't have to join a group or a tribe or an activism just to have an identity. You can be challenged with ideas. You can have someone disagree with you and disagree with them as long as it's a civil conversation. These are okay things. We've met many college students who talk about being in their college classroom and everyone has the same opinion and they don't share it and they're terrified to speak out because they might be ostracized, they might be canceled. This is not what college is for. College is to be challenged. College is to have your ideas put on trial. And you're the one, it's your responsibility to understand your own point of view enough to defend it and to explain it clearly. And so our hope is what Ted just described. When we hear kids come up to us and say, you know what, I'm stronger than I think, or I've always felt this way, but I was afraid to say anything because of X, Y, and Z, which is sort of embolden them with, you're not alone. This is real life. We all go through it and it's okay. And you're in a culture right now, it will hopefully change. I'm hopeful that it will, that things will open up and things will not be so divided in terms of what team are you on? And we talk a little bit about that in the film, this tribal thing that's going on college campuses. What team are you on? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not on a team. Maybe that's what I'm here to find out. Maybe I don't ever want to be on a team. So we want to have kids just feel that internal strength and intellectual strength and get back to critical thinking. Put a thought on trial. See if something, is it working or not? Just because you think something and feel something, if it's a cognitive distortion, if it's catastrophizing, is it truthful? And we talk a lot about that, the psychology behind why are kids going down these wormholes of depression and beating themselves up. We all do it. It's adults, it's children, but it's not real. It's not true. Just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. And our hope is to use the three great untruths, which we talk about in the film too, to allow kids to have that critical thinking and get themselves out of these mental wormholes.
So,
do you want
to add to that?
So it's for both of us.
Well, okay. Well,
I didn't want to hog Jen's question. I felt like I was hogging.
I mean, our big message is hope, that there is hope. And we're pleased to say that the movie works. So we've had so many young people and their parents, sometimes even grandparents, say, I watched this with my 20-something. We both cried together and we opened up like never before. It's also a very funny movie, I should say, because our 20-somethings happen to be very funny. And so our goal is to get the word out as much as possible. I mentioned we've been on dozens and dozens of college campuses. So we have an impact campaign that runs alongside the release of our film. So we're always, raising money for that. We're always looking to spread the word, because it's frankly very difficult to get a movie like this onto the campuses where it's needed most, because people don't want to talk about these issues. So the more that we can get on college campuses, the better. The more that we can get on high schools, which in some ways seem even harder to crack than colleges. We can do that too, and we're very happy to if your listeners and viewers want to bring the movie to their campus, to their high school, their college, we're very happy to waive the screening fee. We want to get the movie out there to as many young people and their parents as possible, because I go back to the initial line of hope. There is hope. There is a way to get out of this very, very dark and destructive worldview.
So how do people connect with you? And separately, how can people see the film?
Yeah, thanks for asking. The coddlingmovie.com is kind of the one-stop shop where you can see all the different places to watch it. Most people probably watch it on Prime Video, so you can watch it there, or at Apple TV, Google Play. If you'd like to follow along with the journey and kind of dig deeper into the issues, then I'd recommend subscribing to our Substack. So you can find that also at thecoddlingmovie.com. And so there are free and paid subscriptions for Substack, so you don't have to pay anything if you don't want to. But it's a great way to follow along with the coddling story, because it is an ongoing story. We've been on this beat for years, and it's going to continue to unfold in different ways. There's some ways in which it looks like things are looking up, but in other ways, I still remain quite pessimistic. For instance, the younger professors tend to be more strident than the older ones they're replacing. So we can't just say, oh, look at all these executive orders that President Trump has passed, and now all the DEI madness is gone. No, because it's more than just the policy. It's a worldview. And these younger professors are more beholden to that worldview than the older ones that they're replacing. So long story short, there's a lot of reason to be hopeful, but it's always about eternal vigilance. And this is another case of that.
Absolutely. And I'm just so thankful for you guys. It is not easy. So it's not lost on me that it is not easy to make projects like this in the entertainment industry today. So the fact that you both have such an important role to play in bringing an important message to the American people, to our parents, to our kids, it's incredible. Again, the movie is called The Coddling of the American Mind, and the website is thecoddlingmovie.com. So you can figure out how to see it there. You can also follow along on social media. And again, subscribe to the Substack as well, thecoddlingmovie.com. The Coddling of the American Mind. And Courtney and Ted Blacker, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you both.
Thank you. It was so much fun.
And thank you, Katie. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Now, don't forget, when you're done with the movie, you can read Katie's book, because you want to be fully submersed.
Oh, we can't wait. Yeah, no.
Yeah, we joke that book will always be.
It's a companion piece, I think.
It will always be timely.
I'm telling you, it is a companion piece. So get Katie's book. It is called Next Gen Marxism, wherever you get your books. Check her out as well, katiegorka.org. You can search for her on Facebook, Catherine Gorka there, and on X at Gorka Katie. You can find me on social media as well, Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, at Jennifer Horn on Truth and on X. And guys, thank you so much for the 5-star reviews and for sharing Happy Women with your friends. You can connect with us on all of our platforms at SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Happy Women. Thanks so much for joining us. It's another episode of the Happy Women Podcast.